Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 8th part of What If RWBY and Weiss Were Childhood Friends. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 15, Hidden in Plain Sight. She felt groggy and RWBY could feel the sharp pains currently happening on one side of her head. Somehow, she had the weirdest/horrible dream. That her double life came knocking on her door and that once again they were about to be pulled into some heaping amount of trouble. It's funny, 2 months ago she would have probably argued with Glinda to hand them more missions of their choice to get just even a little bit closer to their goal of finding out what happened to their parents, but now, with plenty of rest and normality, RWBY didn't really feel like going back and facing all the problems the world's about to throw at them. Of course she'd still continue her pursuit for truth, but she also wanted this mundaneness. Spent with people she cared about. Sitting upright, she cradled her head and tried taking in her surroundings. It was hard to concentrate with the horrible throbbing inside her head, but quickly realized that she was laying down on her living room couch, and she was alone. There were no sounds of Yang doing whatever she usually did at, crap, what time was it? Grabbing the phone inside her shorts, she quickly did a mental recap of the last thing she was doing before she passed out. Okay, so I've been out for about 45 minutes to an hour, she murmurs as she shakes her head. Forcing herself to stand up, she heads for the kitchen's medicine cabinet and grabs some aspirin and immediately pops 2 in her mouth. Still unable to recall what it was that she was forgetting. Then she hears Yang's voice coming from the other hall. And that's that. Her sister says, there's only a couple of rooms here, so I guess we can just bunk to fit, but also, it's a sleepover, so it's customary to just sleep in one room together, right? I vouch for the living room. Guess Weiss and the others arrived while she was out of it, but RWBY still couldn't shake the feeling she'd forgotten something. She walks to where her sister and friends were and was instantly met with a feeling of dread. Instead of just the 7 of them, 4 more people who weren't supposed to be here were present. RWBY was sure there was fear and confusion written clearly in her face, and as she met Yang's gaze, there was only one clear message. Help me, her sister's eyes screamed. Hira was the one who greeted her first. Oh RWBY. You're awake, the redhead smiles at her. Guess Yang did some good damage control whilst she was knocked out. The only question was what? Knowing the 5 of them, Yang with JNPR, well, the story would probably be something absurd and convoluted. They weren't really the best at lying if she was being honest. You know, Red, you really need to take care of yourself better, Coco told her. Velvet follows up with a nod. It's not good to exhaust yourself to the point of sleep deprivation, breaks are important too. Yeah, sorry, I just got too obsessed with this subject. Game, yeah, a video game, she gives them an enthusiastic smile that was a bit difficult to pull off in her current state. Throbbing head, zero charmingness on the account that she probably stank so bad and looking very unpresentable. Maybe that's why Weiss hasn't said a word to her. What if she got disillusioned by this very unkempt RWBY? Anywho, she clears her throat to get everyone's attention. I'll go, freshen up or something, then I'll prepare something for us to eat so we can get studying. That's good, yeah. After the nods of agreement, she smiles at the other group of agents in training. John, Penny, Ren, Nora, good to see you guys. She dips her head and briefly, she lets her eyes dart in Weiss' direction ever so briefly. Sure enough, the girl was looking at her, but her gaze wasn't the typical affectionate she'd always received. This one was new. There was doubt in those baby blue eyes, making it ever so frosty. Walking away from both groups, she had 2 thoughts. What on earth was JNPR doing here, and how the ever-loving fuck were they going to play this off? She was too calm. Too calm to be considered normal, and that's how she knew that this whole situation was way off. That smile she used was too practiced, remaining unfazed by something even Yang was stunned by. But was that enough proof to connect the 2 sisters to a wild theory that seemed so improbable? Were John, Penny, Nora and Ren in on it too? They looked like regular people, just kids their age though, but Yang did react almost violently. She spent enough time with both sisters to know their mannerisms. You could always see a small twitch in Yang's left eye when there was something she didn't like happening. RWBY on the other hand, would always be able to play it off pretty well during inconveniences, but her eyes would always look ever so stormy despite usually being bright and cheery. Weiss can't handle this. This tension between them, she missed the way they just cuddled innocently on her couch, occasionally planting kisses on the younger girl's neck as they enjoyed something they were watching. She missed Ruby, so Weiss really wished her theory was wrong. That their two childhood best friends were simply just a bit more guarded than when they were kids, she would understand that much, with both of them having been through so much at such a young age. But the voice inside her head wouldn't shut up until she found out the full truth. Tonight is when she and Blake will make their move, and she'd praying to all the deities that the one girl she's loved since childhood wasn't really some fucked up killer. When Ruby got back from her shower, there was tension in the air. Not the good kind either. JNPR was awkward as all hell. Yang wasn't even trying to be cheerful, instead getting swallowed up by awkwardness. How'd she know? She didn't even make a single pun about literally anything as of the moment, just looking around the space, eyes darting nervously around. On the other side of the living room, Weiss and Blake looked just as uncomfortable, the white-haired girl looking troubled. Blake, on the other hand, looked just as meek as Yang was currently, looking everywhere but them. Hira was looking around with a polite smile on her face, Coco was on her phone, and Velvet was already reading their physics book. And of course, they left it to Ruby to be the one to break the damn tension. So, she begins to say, and immediately grabs the two groups' attention. I see you've met our other friends. She smiles and meets Weiss' unsure gaze. Really sorry guys, I know we made plans, just didn't expect the sudden drop in from John and the others, letting her eyes head towards John, who cleared his throat awkwardly. Don't worry though, we'll study, I'll just lead them to the guest rooms, it's been a long flight and I bet they'd really like to rest, right John? The blonde boy chuckles nervously before nodding. Why yeah, if it's not a bother, would it be alright to borrow a room for a while? Would you mind waiting for us here? I'll get our school stuff and come down immediately. Sorry again for making you guys wait. She gave her most cordial smile before landing a firm grip on John's forearm, making the boy wince ever so slightly. She gave her best innocent look as she pulled the team of agents away from the living room whilst telling Yang with her gaze to lower down the unpleasantness of the room. As soon as they were a good distance from the group of civvies, John began to speak. Listen Ruby, we're later, John, we'll talk later, when there's no chance of innocent people hearing us, she says quietly, but firmly. You guys get some rest, we'll be having a busy night. She leads them to the room nearest to the basement, which was still a hallway away. It was a decently sized bedroom, similar to their room back at the base, 2 bunk beds on both sides of the wall. At least none of the team's members argued with her about staying up, not even Nora, who seemed most enthusiastic if she remembered correctly, before passing out. Plopping down to each of their beds, John takes the bunk on top of Penny's, immediately falls asleep just moments later. Ren and Nora, on the other hand, share one bed. Nora's eyes closed with a small smile on her face as one of Ren's arms was draped over her. There was one person who looked intent on not sleeping though. Penny? Not gonna rest? She asks, but the orange-haired girl shook her head. No, something's been bothering me, I need to confirm everything first before our briefing tonight, she said, definitely on edge. Oh, while everyone's resting and you guys are studying, I'd like to search more about the pin you found too. Before you leave, do you have anything we can trace it back to? I know you were lying about just finding it somewhere. Ruby exhales a breath she'd been holding. A couple of days ago, we were out, hanging out with Weiss and the others, when a guy with a white trench coat and fedora bumped into me. It felt weird. The moment I saw his eyes, there was already a chill running down my back. My instincts told me that the man was bad news. I tried to think nothing of it at first, but then moments later a fire breaks out. I saved this little girl, and on her back was a note. Written on it was the same greeting he whispered to me when he bumped into me earlier before walking away alongside this pin. That man knows you, Penny murmurs, eyes widening ever so slightly. Ruby nods grimly. Yeah, that's about the gist of it. It's been driving me crazy. Then when we got home, I showed Yang, and to my surprise, she grabbed a similar looking pin from her stuff, and I mean similar pen, same size, length, width, everything, and this one belonged to Adam Taurus. I can see why you'd be desperate to know. A dead syndicate terrorist leader. Then a few months later a mysterious arsonist shows up. Penny says, it's not a coincidence, this fedora man and Adam Taurus are probably connected. I've been trying to find everything I can about the pins, but no matter what I did, there was nothing on it. It's just a damned pin. She runs a hand through her messy hair. No information on the man either, nothing from our database or some of the other branches, no name, no face, he's like a ghost. She sees Penny's eyes light up. A ghost, you say? How did you search for him? I don't know, I was so focused on the pins, all I got was the footage of him from that time he bumped into me. The store he saw me had a camera mounted up front. It was already late when I figured I should search from him instead. Then you guys arrived. She couldn't help but sigh in dejection. I think I have an idea. I'll tell you guys my findings tonight. In the meantime, everyone's probably antsy that you're gone too long. Penny smiles slightly. Go. With a final resolute nod, she left the room and hurriedly walked out. It was then when she turned on a corner and bumped into a certain white-haired beauty, nearly sending the smaller girl tumbling back from the impact if not for the fact that her fast reflexes managed to catch her in the nick of time. Instinctively, she pulls Weiss closer, one hand placed on the small of her back. It had her heart beating faster. This was the closest they'd been in the last few days. Even she wasn't so dense as to not realize this weird air between them. For a moment, both of them were just staring at each other, baby blue eyes landing on her own, only to dip downwards and focus on Ruby's lips before bolting back up to look at her eyes. If she was weaker, she would have leaned in and just took the girl's lips for her own despite her promise to take her out first. To her bigger surprise though, it was Weiss who pulled away first, clearing her throat and standing up straighter. Sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. Yang told me to go find you and, Weiss rambled, cheeks flushed but gaze unwilling to meet Ruby's anymore. Like she was outright refusing it. Did I do something wrong? She couldn't help but ask. She was aware how clingy that sounded, but she was never really one to hold back when it comes to Weiss. I know you've been avoiding me since we got back from that group trip. Did I do something to offend you? Did I hurt you in any way? Don't shut me out, please, she pleads. She had to keep her voice even. Not cry or something. Emotions and no sleep really aren't the best combinations. It only makes Ruby feel worse depending on the situation. The white-haired girl looks at her, straight in the eyes. One hand clenched, holding it over her chest. Weiss lets out a shaky breath before asking her a question she'd been dreading since they saw each other again. Are you hiding something from me? Weiss asked, the brows above those usually soft baby blue eyes furrowed. The only things swimming in that gaze were doubt, confusion, and fear. Something inside Ruby shatters. She never wants to be the one to make Weiss look so distraught, but despite everything inside her practically yelling at her to tell the girl all of it, from what really happened after they'd left until everything she and Yang had done to get here at this point. But she can't. That would only endanger her life. She knew firsthand how dangerous the pursuit of truth could be, and she'd rather get shot 10 times over than bring Weiss into their world. Into her world. So she lies, a skill she'd mastered over the years on this unconventionally dangerous job. If it kept Weiss and everyone she'd loved and cared about safe, she'd lie about everything. No, I'm not keeping anything from you, she replies easily, getting closer and pressing a chaste kiss on Weiss' forehead. Now come on, we have midterms next week and I haven't studied about any of it. She gives her a grin before walking away. She didn't mean to leave Weiss behind, but she wouldn't be able to hide her face otherwise. She had to be normal Ruby right now. She could only hope Yang managed to keep everything else less weird downstairs. Unbeknownst to her, Weiss' knuckle clenched tighter over her chest in hopes of it lessening the pain it felt from Ruby's bald-faced deception. She wipes a tear before shaking her head and heading downstairs. Either way, tonight was the night. She would uncover the truth once and for all. Had it been the typical them, Weiss would have thought it was their normal routine. They studied like normal, Ruby and Yang occasionally bringing some snacks as they all quizzed each other with possible exam questions. From an outside perspective, they all looked like a bunch of normal girls studying together. At some point around 5 in the afternoon, Ruby had stood up and headed for the kitchen to prepare their dinner, leaving them to talk about mundane school topics. Even dinner seemed normal. Just the 7 of them eating on the account that Yang had said JNPR or Juniper as she'd called them, were still jet-lagged and passed out. Then the rest of the night was spent with them just acting like typical students, friends who were having a sleepover. They all stayed in the living room, covering the area with blankets and pillows as they watched a horror film on the giant TV. At some point, Yang had brought them this delicious jasmine tea. She didn't even get to finish it, only taking a couple of sips. Soon, she had begun feeling her eyes get heavy. Weiss didn't even notice when she'd fallen asleep. Only to be woken up by one Blake Belladonna looking frazzled at her. Princess, wake up, Blake hissed, eyes darting around the dark living space, sitting up from the comfortable spot. From beside her where Ruby was earlier, We're just slightly warm sheets. No Ruby in sight. What time is it, Blake? She murmurs, rubbing her eyes to keep it open. Her eyelids felt so heavy, like they were being forced shut. Somewhere past 2, get up, Blake pulls her up. Once her vision adjusted, she sees her 3 friends sleeping soundly from the other side of where she was laying down. Blake on the other hand, moved in a rush, placing pillows underneath a blanket in the shape of a person before covering it and placing Coco's arm around it. We have to move, I found something, the black-haired girl said quietly, and she passes Weiss a pair of socks. Wear this, it'll keep your steps quiet. What? What's going on, Blake? She couldn't help but ask, confused. I think your theory might be right, that maybe Yang and Ruby are in some shady shit, she says like a whisper. Quietly as possible. Why are you suddenly more sure? You were doubting me so much yesterday. Heck, I'm still doubting myself at that. Blake's amber eyes seemed so bright and panicked in the dark hallways of the unknown mansion. They drugged us, Weiss. Well, they drugged you guys. What? She couldn't stop the surprise from her tone, and Blake immediately covered her mouth and looked around to see if anyone saw them. Yang, she gave us tea. That already made me look at her weird. She doesn't drink tea, she drinks protein shakes and other healthy stuff, but not tea. And the way she looked at me as she gave me the cup, she looked guilty. I don't know, like she felt bad, Blake explains as they quietly walk to wherever the girl was leading them. I already had a bad feeling about it, so I just pretended to drink it and pretended to sleep. When I heard you guys softly snoring so quickly, I figured out what they'd done. Weiss was still trying to wrap her head around it. Like her reality was breaking in front of her. Not only that, when I was sleeping, both of them stood up, so I trailed them as quietly as possible. With a final turn, they were face to face with a couple of bookcases. Yang and Ruby are probably still talking with John and the others, so we have to hurry. Wait, slow down, Blake, she says, but the moment the black-haired girl pulls a book out of the case, they hear a small click and the bookcases move apart, revealing a pathway that leads downstairs. The dust pattern wasn't the same as the other areas, Blake explains, face serious before heading down. The bookcases moved back into place from behind them, and as they stepped at the last step of the short staircase, lights opened up and they saw something they would never expect. It was some sort of secret base. High-tech computers on one side, a giant screen in the middle of the room, and on the other, multiple metal tables filled end to end with, the only thing she could use to describe them was gadgets. They looked like those assorted knickknacks the heroes get to use in every action film Ruby was fond of watching. There was a line of tall metal lockers too. And if her theory of Ruby and Yang being part of an organized crime syndicate didn't hold up before, well, surely the huge wall of guns was enough of a sign. Blake. Those are real, right? She gulps as she stares at the plentiful array of weaponry, firearms of various sizes filling the place to the brim. Was I really in love with a criminal? Blake looked like she was on the verge of having a panic attack. First, they drug us, then they're armed to the fucking teeth, the black-haired girl scoffs. But their reaction had to be short-lived as they heard a group of feet walking just on the other side where they had come from. Eyes widening, her and Blake shared a panicked gaze before looking around the room in search of places to hide. Both their eyes landed on the metal lockers, and with a swift movement, they both hid inside. Weiss on the far right locker and Blake on the locker after the one next to hers. The lights automatically turned off, and for a moment her breath hitched, fear gripping her body. Soon, they hear a resounding click and a swift movement of the bookcases opening and the light automatically turning on. Luckily, the lockers were empty and had slits on them, not only letting her and Blake breathe but also giving them the chance to see the outside. The first person they saw stepping in was Ruby, looking more serious than she'd ever seen the girl. Yang, too, looked very troubled. Quite unlike the typical jovial golden-haired girl. Followed by the other 4 guests. The one who spoke first amongst them was John. Are you sure they're not gonna wake up and just accidentally see us talking here? If she was having trouble believing it, she got her confirmation as Yang shook her head and answered seriously, no, I made em drink some sleepers, they'll be out cold for the next 8 hours, hopefully with pleasant dreams. Good, we can't let them be dragged into this, Ruby says, pressing a button, and a whirring sound could be heard as a metal table gets raised from the middle of the room. Now, on to business, tell us what you found, Penny. Her typical sweet and adorable doll was nowhere to be found. Replaced with a no-nonsense leader who was quite literally commanding everyone like a drill sergeant right now. The orange-haired girl nodded. I have reason to believe that the man you bumped into might very well be the same man we've been looking for, and even if he wasn't, he knows Ruby and Yang, presumably WPO as a whole too. She typed something on the table she held in her hands, before plugging it into a wire, and the giant screen in the center of the room lit up. As if she wasn't confused enough, the person on the screen was the same man Ruby had bumped into a few days prior. The fedora-wearing man. Come to think of it, that really when Ruby had started acting weird. The story that came out of the girl's mouth though, that's when Weiss' theory had begun falling apart. Ruby recounted the story from her perspective, and she found out the complete tale from the girl herself, and this very man on the screen was the one that caused the fire. This guy, he bumped into me and called me girly, then the girl who was used as bait had a similar note that called me girly too, and I know it sounds like I'm reaching but I'm not. The guy's bad news, and he specifically thought led us there that day, to the building. Ruby says grimly, there's just something very off about this guy, something really bad. Penny follows up too, looking unlike the shy self she showed earlier today. When Ruby pointed out about this seemingly elusive man, I did my digging, literally hacked through almost all the cameras in the city where he could have passed through when he left Agent Rose that day. Whoa, 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 back the fuck up. What the hell was going on? Agent Rose? She could tell that her breathing went ragged for a moment, but she instead bit her lip and forced herself to not move. Now not only did she feel bad for accusing Yang and Ruby about heinous crimes they've committed, she has a whole new set of questions. Were they spies or something? She tried to focus her attention on the orange-haired girl as she continued her report, shoving all the queries flying inside her head right now. I trailed this man, and the last place I could find him was the docks, Penny says seriously, and I tried seeing the inside of one of the warehouses. Trust me, I did, but the place just feels abandoned, empty, nothing going in through the back, no cameras, no virtual ports I could get into. I reckon this warehouse is old, really old, probably something someone hasn't used in a long while, and in a busy such as Vale, there's hardly any activity down by Bay. It's quiet, it's clear from surveillance. So what you're saying is, Roman Torchwick, the ever-elusive weapons provider, is here, in Vale, just so happened to be here too, and has made contact with 2 agents. Ren said carefully, summarizing the information. I was beginning to think it was a reach, but they targeted Ruby specifically, so he's clearly well informed about the organization. Before cracking a small smile, excellent find. The question is, what are we going to do with this information? If that really is Torchwick, then we gotta go investigate. Yeah. Nora grins, pounding one fist on the palm of her other hand. I'm ready to slam my thunder hammer on him. Let's go. Please, Nora, we can't just kill him immediately, we have to get information out of him too, John says exasperatedly, like find out his connection to Adam Taurus and just what the heck it was they were planning with that amount of ballistics. Weiss didn't know how to take John's tone. The way he said kill so easily, just on Earth were these guys? John's right, and chances are, this guy isn't alone, Yang says seriously. Place is probably teeming with highly armed guards, so we'll have 2 options. Find a way in or make a way in. I prefer the former, Ruby finishes, letting the 4 newcomers look around at themselves. Wait, you're coming with us? John says surprised, but what about your provision? Won't Ajban be mad? Ruby and Yang shared a look, then the older Xiao Long just grins menacingly. Fuck Ajban. We're coming with. If these guys didn't want to mess with us, then they shouldn't have sent that declaration of war. They want me and Rubes. They're gonna get us. Ideally you guys would also keep shut about our involvement. Fuck Ajban or not, we have to see this through. We ought to warn Glinda first though, at least let an adult know about the situation at hand. About that? Penny says unsurely, I can't get a hold of Ma'am Goodwitch. The last thing she sent me was that it was up to us to find out more about Roman Torchwick and to keep everyone out of trouble. Okay, we have 0 backup then, sure, barging in with 2 experienced, albeit not currently on active duty agents, and 4 rookies who hasn't even earned their uniforms yet. John laughs mirthlessly before gulping nervously. I feel like we're biting more than we can chew. No Glinda means we have no command center either. As higher ranked officers, me and Ruby technically have to give orders. Yang chuckles, I vote for Rubes. But you're older, Ruby says with a frown. Age isn't related, you make better decisions than me on the fly when it comes to missions. Yang smiles, giving her younger sister a pat on the back. We'll do your commands, Chief. I feel like you're just throwing all the responsibility to me, the younger girl huffed, earning chuckles from everyone else. but I suppose, the first thing we should prioritize is this one. She points back at the man on the screen. I say infiltration, but we can't all go, too many of us. Suggestions? Ren raises a hand, Nora too, but is quickly shot down by RWBY. No, you're as bad as Yang when it comes to silent ops, Nora. The peach-haired girl's face fell but didn't argue. Penny, would it be alright for you to be our handler this time? Take Glinda's place. Me, Ren and John will infiltrate, RWBY says in deep thought, and if things go south, Yang and Nora will be waiting outside for extra power. This could get dangerous, so keep hidden and wait for our signal. When are we gonna do this? Ren asked. Tomorrow, as soon as Weiss and the others leave, we'll begin recon and final planning. I don't want to drag them into this. RWBY's expression looked so painful, but she shook her head and her eyes became steely again. Gee, you sure are protective of her, Nora says with a smirk. Something you want to tell us, Agent Rose? Please don't start, Nora, I'm stressed enough as it is. The silver-eyed girl sighs. I already feel bad about lying to her, but I can't exactly tell the truth either. True, but it's not like we're the bad guys. John smiles. Heck, we save the world. You guys have already done so. I'd like to think that she'd be a little bit more impressed by that, right? RWBY Rose, secret agent extraordinaire. Would she feel the same if she knew just how easily I could pull the trigger to end someone's life, John? RWBY's tone grew colder. In the end, saving the world or not, we're nothing but glorified killers, and I am not dragging the only girl who made me feel like I'm not a freak in this fucking mess, Kappas. RWBY all but spat. Not everything in this job is sunshine and rainbows. It's hard missions and harder choices. It's not a damn action movie and where everything you do is right. This job is one big fucking gray area, John. And the sooner you learn that not everything is cool missions with wicked ass weapons, RWBY mocked, the sooner you'll learn the hard fucking truth that this path you chose is quite possibly the worst decision you've made. The blonde boy looked downwards, absolutely crestfallen, and the mood between the six friends immediately went cold. Weiss could see RWBY's face. It was angry. Then a few moments after she had finished, she looked just as downcast before apologizing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snap at you, John. It's just been a stressful couple of days. It's cool, John says, forcing a small smile on his face. I didn't mean to make it sound like, well, like this was just a game or something. No one said anything for a good moment before RWBY sighs and turns off the screen behind them. We'll reconvene tomorrow, once the civilians have left. Till then, everyone get some rest. We'll be busy for the next couple of days. The first person who left was John, dipping his head and saying his good nights. Ren and Nora followed. Penny left last, telling the sisters that she would try to find more information on this Torchwick person before going to bed. Soon it was just the four of them, her and Blake hiding. RWBY and Yang outside, sitting on the metal table that rose up from the floor. Cookie for your thoughts? Yang asks, placing an arm on her sister's shoulder before pulling her closer. It must be real bad for you to rant at John like that. You're usually very tolerant of a lot of things. I didn't mean to, it's just, he's inexperienced. RWBY clicks a tongue as she leans on Yang. He thinks it's all that, it's just saving the world over and over again. He only sees the big picture, the end result of all our actions. Yang nods but doesn't say anything else, letting RWBY speak her mind. He doesn't know about the finer details, the enemies that will do everything in their power to get back at you for trying to do right thing. He doesn't know the haunting faces of every single person you've killed just to defend yourself. He hasn't lost anything to this job, so he gets to act as if everything we do is just this action sequence playing in front of him. RWBY chokes. He hasn't lost anything the way we have, and it just pissed me off that he could easily say things like kill or that we're doing this for the fucking recognition. I just wanted to find out what happened to our family, the full truth, but him, he's in it for the fucking glory, cause it's so cool to be a secret agent, that it's just so fucking awesome to be a fucking hero. She all but spat. I'm happy for him, really, that he hasn't lost anything, that he still has that childlike innocence. I know. I get you, Yang says quietly. What I wouldn't give for us to still have that simple-mindedness, that the only things we'd have to worry about is growing up, getting good grades and wooing our ladies. Yang chuckles. Everything's falling apart, Yang, I can feel it, a storm brewing. This is just the start, the girl with crimson tips said with hurt laced in her tone, and I don't know what to do. We haven't even heard anything from Uncle Crow in 3 weeks. Now Glinda's missing too. It's like the organization's being eaten alive from the inside and none of us know anything. Yang takes a deep breath before jumping off the table and smiling at her sister. Tell you what, after our infiltration tomorrow, we ask Principal Port to give us some time off and we go investigate a separate matter. After all, Roman Torchwick isn't our assignment, it's JNPR's. Then what? Ruby asks the golden-haired girl. Then we resume what we've always done, we are agents after all. I say we get a head start on finding our dearest Glinda and one old man. Yang crosses her arms and nods, and I know just how to start. How? Uncle Crow periodically checks his devices to make sure we're not always tailing him. Glinda on the other hand, she's literally Glinda, the lady's got no weak points. I don't think we can get a lead out of her either, never mind the fact that she's nowhere to be found. She'd never risk information that would put any of us in jeopardy. Simple, we have access to the STRQ bases. I'll bet anything that Uncle Crow's first instinct is to hide out in their base, and that's where Glinda would look first. How are we even going to those? Most of them can only be reached via falling off a damn plane. Don't worry, I'll get that our mode of transportation. In the meantime, we have a Torchwick to find. Let's deal with everything after. Yang places a hand on top of Ruby's head. So, sleep. You're forgetting one very important detail, Yang. What are we gonna tell Blake and Weiss? Weiss is already suspicious of us, even I can tell that. Ruby sighs. We can't just disappear on them again, but we can't tell the truth either. Something tells me they'll be pretty understanding of our circumstances if they ever find out. For now, go get some sleep, in your room this time, plenty of space for you to mope without bothering our guests in the living room, Yang says easily. Rest, I'll clean up here, and all but pushed her sister out. Wait, Yang. Ruby calls and Yang raises a brow. Thanks. I feel better, I'll apologize to John again tomorrow. Don't stay up too late, you hear? You too, now get. Yang chuckles, and once they hear the sound of the bookcases opening, Yang leans on the table again, crossing her arms and smiling slyly. The next thing that happened wasn't quite what she expected. Then again, this night has brought nothing but unexpectedness. So, Blake, Weiss, you do understand our circumstances now, do you? Yang looks directly at her eyes through the locker slits. She hears Blake push the metal door open, so she follows suit. She'd never expect to find Yang Xiaolong, pun master, second dork next to her own, to be this intimidating. Relax, you guys look like you just got caught stealing from a cookie jar, she smirks before standing up straight and placing her hands on inside her pockets. Her entire stance seemed so calm and relaxed, as if they didn't just find out they were some sort of super spies. I have to admit, you two are really good for being able to find this place. Guessing Blakey's the one who found the passage. Blake nods, not quite sure how to proceed. Her Yang was typically a sweet jokester. This one in front of her looked like a battle-hardened tactician, like she knew their every move. The black-haired girl couldn't help but ask, how'd you know? Please, I knew from the time I gave you the cup, that you were just pretending to drink and sleep. I knew that you followed us around, and I knew you'd figure out how to open the door, and there's only place someone could hide here that could remain relatively unseen. Yang smirks. I knew from the very beginning. After all, I've always prided myself in being the observant one. I'm guessing you thought me and Ruby were assassins for hire or something along those lines, that you started acting like we just kill for the fun of it. At this, Yang grows serious. Well, I guess since you're here, it's about time I tell you the truth. Weiss couldn't help but gulp in fear as Yang leads them towards the table in the middle of the room, pressing a button that it whir again. Soon chairs pull up from the floor and they take a reluctant seat across each other. Now that everyone's ready for a recap, let me tell you the story of how I became Agent Xiaolong and how Ruby became Agent Rose, and what exactly the WPO is. Yang smiles slyly again before sitting down on the chair at the end of the table. So, please, reserve all your harsh comments about us until then, cause it all started like this. Chapter 16, Truth and Apologies. Weiss was laying down on her bed, in her own bedroom, staring up at the ceiling, thinking of nothing and everything. They've been home for hours now and she hardly moved since they got back. Time passed by and soon it was getting late. The sun had long set and she knew it was about to begin. She hears a faint knock on her door, but she couldn't be bothered to get up to open it, simply saying come in, and immediately, Blake goes inside, walks toward her and plops on the spot beside her. How are you holding up? The black-haired girl asked, tone somewhat unsure. Honestly, she couldn't blame her. What with everything that just happened, it was hard to believe reality as of the moment. I don't know. I'm worried about them though, Weiss answers truthfully. It makes want to just go to where they are, but I know I'd only get in the way. I'm worried too, but we can't exactly barge into their mission. Who knows what might go down there. Knowing everything we've seen and known so far, it'll be violent and we'll see more of the side of them we never thought we'd see. Blake replies in deep thought, are you sure you're ready for that? It's one thing to know about the truth, but to witness it with your own eyes. I know that, Belladonna, she sighs, but still. I want to be there, especially now, after everything I've accused them with. The least I can do is to stand there by Ruby's side despite the danger I might be facing. I want to be there for her now more than ever. I can't believe we're even considering this. We could get hurt or worse, Shni. Blake sits up and looks at her with an exasperated expression. Yang specifically said to stay away. Yes, well. I'm not just sitting back without doing anything. Now, are you in or will I be going alone? Weiss couldn't help but pull her lips up a bit as she could see the clear troubled contemplation on Blake's face. I know you want to. We're gonna get in a lot of trouble, not just from Yang. Pretty sure if we go there, this'll be the first time we'll see Ruby mad and our parents would kill us if we died. Blake deadpans, but Weiss just waves a hand and stands up. Sometimes life calls for spontaneity. Weiss heads for her closet, looking for something more appropriate to wear for a stakeout. Not many options honestly. It's not like she had a wardrobe phase where all she wore was things a secret agent would wear. Trust me, Shni, this is the kind of spontaneous we shouldn't even be considering, Blake says exasperatedly. Or did you miss the part where we could die and worse? Please, we can be subtle, and do you have any clothes that'll be dark enough to hide us in the shadows? Weiss raises a brow at her friend and Blake just crosses her arms. We have to hurry. Tisk, I have leather jackets, but I don't think you'll be able to hide that hair of yours. At the statement, smirks at the black-haired girl. I knew you'd see it my way. Don't worry about that. Let's get prepped first, then we'll think of what comes after. If Yang chews us out, I'm bailing on you. I can live with that. Our family has been in this line of work since they were kids our age, if not younger. Yang begins, and all Blake and her could do was sit and listen to their friend. And, our family isn't quite like others. Sure, they were secret agents and that already throws them overboard for what people consider normal. Our dad, Taeyang, wasn't exactly our dad. Well, he is, scientifically speaking. Despite them being confused, neither spoke and just let the blonde tell their tale. Dad was the donor, instead of a regular mom and dad. Ruby and I actually had two moms instead. One was Summer Rose, the one who died just before we met you, the other, Raven Branwen. Uncle Crow's twin sister, who went missing in action just a few weeks after Summer gave birth to Ruby. Shortly after her mission, they declared her dead. The look on Yang's face was a different kind of hurt they haven't seen before either. Not just Raven though, she was just the start. A few years later, Summer disappears too, only to be declared missing in action, presumed dead, followed up by Taeyang, who seemingly disappeared into thin air and was declared missing in action and dead too. Yang shakes her head and steadies herself. The story we told you, the one where we said we got attacked by a bunch of Uncle Crow's enemies. Well, that was true, for the most part, but it wasn't some simple thugs. Crow works for a protection agency, the World Protection Order, to be exact, a secret organization dedicated to keeping the world safe from the various evils threatening to end it. Says so in the name, all while staying in the shadows. He took us with him but ended up getting beaten up and dragged back to his base as a hostage. The thugs were part of some big smuggling ring or something, but that was when it started. Ruby and I, we had killed 6 guys, and that was how we got dragged in. No, that's not right. Yang shakes her head. We forced our way into the organization to learn what exactly happened to our family. Me and Rubes figured that whatever happened to them wasn't some sort of coincidence and that their line of work had something to do with it. And Ujban, the big boss of the WPO, was all too eager to have fresh and talented blood joining his organization. The blonde-haired girl's eyes looked so impossibly distant, and that's what we had done since, doing missions for the greater good. She all but spat. Before we knew it, we were already in pretty deep. What kind of things have you and Ruby done? Blake spoke up, gaze resolute, meeting Yang's uneasy ones. Well, if you look at it from a certain standpoint, the organizations that is, we've stopped bad people from doing bad things, illegal drug rings, weapons trading, human trafficking, we've even stopped people from nuking the world. If you think about it, it's good, right? She sighs, but accompanied by that, we've killed, we have hurt and worse, so, how does that make us any different than the assholes who were doing the same thing? Yang shrugs. Truth be told, It used to bother me, like a pit constantly gnawing at the back of my head, but years on this job starting out so young. I've learned to just go with the flow, no matter what the outcome. I have to accept it or I'll go insane, but Ruby's not like that though. The blonde-haired girl pulls out a pistol from her back pocket, seemingly out of thin air, inspecting the crevices of the barrel before placing it on the table. Ruby's burdened by her actions, she can't let it go the same way I do. She carries each death on her back like a boulder, a baggage haunting her every move, but she pushes forward for our truth, and that's the entirety of the story. We're not doing this for anything other than the desire for the truth. I'm sorry for thinking about both of you wrongly, Weiss says, dipping her head. I thought of you as something so nefarious. I understand why you thought we would be how you thought we were, but I guess it just hurt that you two of all people would think me and Ruby would be doing this for something so shallow as having fun. It stung. Yang chuckles mirthlessly. You painted us as if we were mindless killers who enjoyed the thrill of the hunt. Yang, Blake bites her lips, holding her gaze, trying her best to keep herself from crying. Did we really seem that evil to you? Yang took a step closer to them. Did my sister and I do anything to make you feel that we would hurt you? No. Blake spoke up, amber eyes fiery and full of conviction. I was just scared, I guess. I was scared of the side of you I've never met before, and I wholeheartedly apologize for judging you two despite not knowing the whole situation. I'm sorry, Yang. You're not some criminal or a cold-hearted murderer. You two were just kids desperate to know the whole story. I'm sorry for lying too. That part, we had no choice on the matter. The less you two knew, the less chances you'd be dragged into this horrible, violent world. Yang sighs. But now, not only do you know our past, you also know about our future plans. Let us help. Whatever you need. I want to make it up to you and Ruby for judging you unfairly. Weiss says, please. I need to apologize to Ruby too. But Yang just shook her head. No, that's the one thing I won't let you do. It's bad enough I'm lying to Rubes about this whole mess. I have no fucking clue how she'll react if she finds out you two know. Yang glared at them straight into their very souls. Swear to me you won't do anything I told you not to do, understand, please. We can't lose you two. Yang walks closer, grabbing Blake's hands on hers, intertwining their fingers as she pulls it up to kiss the back of the black-haired girl's hand. Please, no matter what or how bad it gets, stay away. Lilac eyes lands on Weiss icy blues. Both of you, understand? Unable to say anything else, the pair just nodded, not all agreeing to the statement, but they had already put the taller blonde through so much in one evening. You really want us to not do anything knowing you're willingly putting yourselves in danger, Blake says, brows furrowed, lips set in a thin line. Yes, for everyone's sake. Yang pulls away, turning around. Now, it's time for you guys to get some sleep. I have to rest too. We have a long day ahead. The last thing Weiss and Blake had seen that night was Yang's tense back and the promise of a harder tomorrow. They were lucky the civilians didn't seem to think anything strange was afoot as they woke up from their drug-induced slumber. One less thing to worry about, Ruby thought. They all ate a somewhat normal breakfast together before everyone decided it was time to go back to their respective houses. Hira went first, saying she needed to go to the gym first before heading home, so she was going to warm up by running all the way back to the city. Coco went with Velvet, the pair taking a cab, with the former saying she was gonna get more tutoring from someone who wasn't going to betray her. Blake and Weiss went last, and for some reason, the awkward air around her and the white-haired girl was left in this weird place. Like all of a sudden, Weiss was okay despite acting weird the past few days, but Ruby could see the worried line set on her forehead as she was thinking of something deeply. She couldn't help but ask the girl out loud. Are you, okay Weiss, she says awkwardly, and the white girl stares at her looking anxious and concerned. The white-haired girl walks up to her and then practically tackles her and gives her a tight hug. I'm sorry, she murmurs, face pressed on the crook of Ruby's neck. For what? She couldn't help but ask, still returning the embrace. For a moment, as Weiss held her, she felt normal again. Like the constant weight of the world wasn't crushing her for once. For being so weird lately, Weiss pulls her head away to meet Ruby's soft gaze. I'm sorry. We all have those days, my snowflake. She presses a chaste kiss on the shorter girl's forehead. You and Blake have to get home soon though. We have to, clean up the place. I know, just stay safe from all the cleaning, alright? Weiss says, don't do things you can't do alone, got it? Ruby couldn't help but raise a brow at the odd statement, but the serious expression on the girl's face wasn't something she could refute, so she just nodded. The final thing that the girl did was press a kiss on Ruby's cheek before pulling away. It wasn't long before it was just her and Yang watching the pair drive away. "You ready?" Yang asks her, eyes unwilling away to look away from the pair until they couldn't see them any longer. It was time. "Yeah, let's go." "Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies."